Hello, everybody. Welcome back into my latest live broadcast. Today it is 1 o'clock p.m., our regular starting time, the 20th of March, 2025. My name is CareyHolzman, and thanks you guys for tuning in. If you're new here, we hope you'll stick around and join our live chat community. We have the friendliest community of this size that I have ever seen on the internet, and we'd love for you to be a part of it. If you're also consider yourself to be a kind individual, there's lots of new friends waiting to meet you. Just pop on in and say hello. Watch what happens next. We'd love to have you in there. And speaking of that, here in the chat room already, we've got some members joining us early. And we'll shout out a hello to John Williams and Mark Baggett, Patrick T, and Scott saying hello. We also have, excuse me, we have Gary Bickle, Craig Wilson, Dustin Fuller, Craig Wilson said he was having trouble sharing files on his home network, and he watched a video about the edits in group policy. The problem is solved. Is it that, you know, what's interesting is, did you read the video notes? Because after I had made the video, I learned that there was a much faster way to do it, just simply typing commands in PowerShell, and I added those to the video notes. And quite often, I keep seeing comments from people who, you know, perhaps have the home version of Windows and don't have the group policy editor. And the better thing about doing it through PowerShell is it's the same regardless. It's a copy and paste situation instead of drilling down through the group policy editor or saying do it one way with Pro and another way with Home. The problem initially did not occur to Home, but then an update came out and changed all that. So my options are to completely remake the video, or the only thing YouTube allows me to do to make any changes after a video is posted is to update the video notes. So I strongly encourage you to create a new habit that if you were not reading those video notes, and I'm assuming you're not, or maybe you did, but I'm assuming you didn't because you did it the hard way. I'm glad to hear it solves your problem, and I appreciate you letting me know. Excuse me. And I want you to know there's an easier way to do it since I've made the video, and that's right there in the front of the video notes under the video. So just an FYI, just trying to get the word out. Nearly every day I have to remind people. I get comments from people to say, this doesn't work in Windows 10 Home, and I have to say, look, man, just read the video notes. So anyway, I'll just keep reminding people. I guess it's just not a normal behavior of most YouTube viewers. I'm assuming you didn't do that, but I am glad to hear that those steps helped. I've just found an easier way to do it. I think you'll find it's easier too. So just an FYI, and thank you for letting me know it helped you. That's why it's out there. Let's see, who else do we have? Eddie Casanova joins us. Charlie Purdy says hello. Welcome in, Charlie. Marlena, of course, our channel administrator, hanging out in there, saying hello to everybody. Mark Gaines, our friend in Northern Ireland, with a 10-pound super chat. Says hello, Carey, Mara, and everyone in the chat. Thomas Mac T says hello. There's also Dwayne Blackwelder, who just renews membership, now a member for 28 months. That's awesome. Thank you, Dwayne. Stealth Mode and Kurt Schlegel are joining us and saying hello. Brad Ravel and Richard DeFries say hello. There's Dazzle555 and Barry Klein. Ben Laird says hello from Scotland. Patrick Manny also joining us. And let's see if I'm missing anybody here. Greg Wilson with a $10 super chat. He says, thanks for all you do. I learn something every time I watch a video. Well, we're about to learn something together today. This one's taken a twist regarding the PC. We started to review the mini PC yesterday. And we're going to talk about that in a minute, but thank you for your super chat and thank you for your kind words. I do appreciate it. Abdul Azim Patel contributes $9.99 in super chat. Thank you, Abdul. Good to see you, my friend. Dreek says, greetings from Belgium. Gil Garcia says hello, as does Todd Wiggum. And let's see, Chris Dunn is in there. Oh, Nick Poverman says hello. Welcome in, Nick. Did I get everybody? I hope so. Claudio Ventura says hello. Welcome in, everybody. Claudio joins us from Portugal. There's a show on the BBC. Is it the BBC or ITV? where somebody is doing a can't even think of the guy's name. I'm so well prepared. A travel show about why so many Britons are going to Portugal. What's so great about it? And he goes to investigate the food, the culture, and the appeal of it. And Subaru Mike is very, very interested in moving to Portugal, but he's never been there. So I'm like, Mike, you got to watch the show. So anyway, I don't personally see a lot or hear a lot about Portugal here in the USA. And my ancestry is, on my mother's side, very Portuguese. So you'd think I'd know a bit more about it, but I know very little and wouldn't even be up for discussion, except Subaru Mike just won't stop talking about how he wants to go there. He wants to have that beautiful weather all year round and get away from the American politics. And it's supposed to be a relatively inexpensive place to survive if he's retiring on a limited budget. This is what he's telling me. I don't know if it's true. And I've not yet watched this TV series, but it's currently airing 1 episode a week. I don't know how many episodes there are in total. But if you like travel shows, it looks very well done from what I've skipped through. And I do intend to sit down and actually watch it because I'm curious myself. That's a long way to say hello to Claudio, but welcome in. We don't see many people from Portugal joining us, so we're certainly glad to have you here. All right, so let me explain routine and expectation. Its scale, what I see a lot of, determines my default reaction to things. Some people see something very minor and they make it out like it's a big deal, and it isn't. So when I see, especially with the Asian manufacturers, making mistakes in their Amazon listings, and I'm not crying foul or deception, it's pretty common, and it sometimes isn't always in their benefit. So yesterday rather, when we were looking at how this Kamrui PC was advertised on the Amazon page, there's a few mistakes. It says it has a dual LAN that's both 1 and 2.5 gig. It does not. It's a 1 gig LAN. It's a Realtek 1 gig LAN. There is no second LAN. Simple mistake, probably from a copy and paste. No big deal. We see it's a Ryzen 7, which is a relatively powerful processor. A couple of years old, but nonetheless. And when we unbox it, we see it's got a older version of Windows, 23H2, instead of the latest version, 24H2. And again, that's easily expected and nothing to cry foul about. It's an older machine. Likely that's what's causing its reduction in price. I don't see anything here that doesn't make any sense. We went ahead and did the updates during yesterday's video, and we were not able to complete those updates by the time when the video had ended. We ran out of time. It was still updating. But after the show, I went ahead and ran some tests on it, and that's when I found some things that are not easily excusable. One of the things I found right away is in the product listing for this, the Kamrui PC, this specific one, there are 5 other computers, and when you look at the reviews, you don't know necessarily which review is for which computer on that page unless you specifically seek out that detail. Also, when I look at when I look on YouTube for product reviews of this, I'm finding like robotic type AI still images with a voiceover talking about how great this is without any human being or hands demonstrating it. They just took still photos, made a video out of it. You know, the views pay the same, so why put more effort into it than you have to? I also found 2 content creators that did not even open it up and just said how great it was without demonstrating what the limitations were. So the first thing that it acknowledges on the Amazon page is it has 2 M.2 slots, one that's an NVMe drive and one that's a SATA M.2 slot. And I assumed, of course, they're using the NVMe drive on a system of this caliber. They would not be using the SATA. That's too slow. And if you look at prices for the same capacity M.2, 512 to 512, 1 terabyte to 1 terabyte, you often find the SATA drives are 5 to 6 times slower and cost the same, if not more. So why would you spend more for the same capacity to go 1/6 the speed? Nobody would do that, right? Well, that seems like that's what they did here. Now, this machine is a very respectably fast computer, but it is being voluntarily handicapped or limited by the drive they've selected to put in there. And the Amazon listing doesn't say what kind of drive it is. It just says it's an M.2 drive, so they're not lying. But they're also not being fully transparent. And that's where things take a turn for the worse. Because while I'm willing to give Kamrui every benefit of the doubt, it wasn't until I got to that part of the testing that I realized a few things. So let me go to the screenshots that I took. Because remember, it's all about the price. For what they're asking for this, currently $320, plus we have an additional discount code in our video notes. I went from yesterday saying I don't see any reason to buy it, to today saying I want to retract that. I'm not sure that this is that good of a value after all, because the cost for you to replace that drive defeats the discount on the thing to begin with. So I took some screenshots of both the Cinebench R23 results, which I don't really care about. It's not designed to run that kind of work, but just out of curiosity, you know, how will this perform? What sort of heat will we get out of it? How loud will it get? Well, it never really got loud. And of course, we didn't have time to take a look at the BIOS and see what's going on in there. So we can investigate this further today, which involves also opening it up. And I was not expecting this. I just thought there's no way they did that. There's no way they bought the cheapest set of tires on the market to put on a high-performance sports car. It doesn't make any sense. It's mismatched, and suddenly now the value isn't there anymore. So let me go over to my images, which I have to find. Give me just one moment here. We'll go to figure out which folder I put my images in. They're over here. Yeah, okay. So let's take a look at Cinebench results first and foremost. These Cinebench results, they show us our score in the upper left here, the CPU multi-core and single-core scores, which are fine. I mean, for what this processor is, it's doing what this processor does. Maybe a little bit low, maybe a little under wattage. The reason I say that is when I come over here and look at the temperatures, it never broke 84.4. I think that's what that says, 84 point something. And that's likely limited in the BIOS to prevent it from getting hotter than that. That's my guess, which means they're playing it very cautious in the configuration of this machine, a little bit conservative. This machine could do a bit better. 84.8 Celsius was our highest temperature recorded. Did I not expand the individual cores? It doesn't matter. The point is, I would expect a little mini PC like this to hit 95 before it throttles. They're throttling a bit early. However, better to have it throttle early than late over a long-term use. But then, it's really not the best use for a kind of computer like this anyway to do that kind of work. It can do it. So it doesn't... I know there's some performance left on the table here, and probably out of caution would be my guess. And I haven't gone into the BIOS to see if we can boost that up a little bit, but it's not going to make a night and day difference regardless. You'll just see some difference in benchmarks primarily. What did concern me, however, was my crystal disk. It's not info, crystal disk mark right here. So crystal disk mark shows 547 megabytes per second read speed instead of the 4,000 I was expecting on a Gen 4 drive. For that matter, we don't even know if this is Gen 3 or Gen 4, but we do know that one of the M.2 slots in this dual M.2 slot configuration runs at SATA. I just didn't expect that to be what they used. This should be like a data drive. In fact, I wouldn't use a second drive in any mini PC because of the heat that's trapped in it. But on the other hand, if a mini PC does have a cooling fan down in that section of the RAM and M.2, well, then that's a slightly different story. You're still adding more heat, but at least you've got a fan, an active fan, to do more than just passively cool this thing with no movement of air. So these numbers, I had to take a double take. I had to look at them twice, thinking, that can't be right. We haven't seen numbers like that for 15 years. So I take another look at Crystal Disk info without opening the unit up, just to see what's in there. And I see that the unit is serial ATA. I see that the connection is a serial ATA connection. Now, what gets me about this is if we go on Amazon and we price out a 512 gig M.2 drive, you know what, let's just do it now. Let's get rid of this image. I want to show you why this is unacceptable. This is an Achilles heel to what is otherwise a great configuration, in my opinion. If we jump over to Amazon here, let's get over here, and we'll turn on window capture. And we're going to type in 512 gig M2 SATA. Okay, so what's that going to cost us? 30 bucks? Let's just call it 30 bucks, okay? Doesn't matter who makes it. A SATA's SATA. Let's change that to NVMe and see what our cost difference is. It's approximately $2 more. And if we keep scrolling, I suspect, yeah, same exact price, $30. Same exact price. Now, granted, this one's not going to go at 4,000. This is only a Gen 3. But still, at 2,400 megabytes per second, we're 5 times, nearly, certainly over 4 times faster with the same capacity for the same price. Why would we not do that? I don't understand. There's no cost savings involved. And why would you degrade the capabilities of your product voluntarily, which could seriously restrict sales and leave customers dissatisfied by not meeting standard expectations? So I'm having a hard time wrapping my mind around this. I haven't seen a SATA-based M.2 installed by default in anything in a long, long time. Certainly if we're talking about computers that are 8 or 9 years old, maybe. But even then, not so much. You have to go back pretty far for that to start to become the SATA NVMe drives were never really popular. Sorry, not NVMe. The SATA M.2 drives were never really popular because SATA is SATA. So what difference does it make if you're running a cable to it or you're plugging it in the slot? And so when the M.2 form factor started releasing these little M.2 form factor or next generation form factor drives, they sort of released the SATA and NVMe versions at the same time, as I recall. If not, it wasn't very long. There was no benefit to putting the SATA drive into the M.2 connector because it wasn't getting you any more speed. Sure, it reduced the need for a power and data cable, but otherwise everything else was the same. And if you could go 5 times faster in your read and write speeds, and in that case, it was a couple of dollars more, maybe $5 or $10 more, even back then. Isn't that a no-brainer? Like, just either plug a drive in the old-fashioned way. If you want to use the new M.2 connector, get NVMe. And the problem is, the M.2 connectors are typically only going to support either NVMe protocol or SATA protocol. Very few of them support both. It gets a little complicated. They do exist, but they're pretty rare to see them. So that means the only thing that M.2 slot will accept will be either NVMe or SATA. And since SATA is sort of redundant when you already have SATA drives, and all you're doing is changing the interface and how you're plugging it in, and I suppose the size of it, right? It's a little more compact. There is no speed differential. There's no technological differential with regards to performance, longevity, reliability. All of that's the same. So, you know, I'm looking at this last night and I'm thinking to myself, if I would have known this, I would not have accepted this for review. But now that we have it, I have no choice but to be honest and let you know what I have found reduces and reverses my recommendation for the product. In order for this product to be a value, they need to put an NVMe drive in it. If this product requires a consumer to change anything in it to make it decent, then I would say buy something else. When you buy a brand new product, you should not have to be opening it up and modifying it. Now, if they sold a bare bones version of this, where you had to provide your own RAM, storage, and operating system, and it was discounted accordingly, it may go back on my recommendation list depending on what that price is. However, between the mistakes made on the website, they mentioned it had Wi-Fi 6. It does not. It has Wi-Fi 6E, which again works against them because somebody might not buy it because of the information not, being inaccurate. Somebody says, well, if it doesn't have Wi-Fi 6E, I'm not going to buy it. They say it has Wi-Fi 6. It has Wi-Fi 6E. There's, one mistake after another that, again, I can say, that's pretty common. It's no big deal. But this, having a SATA M.2 drive is such a small capacity. At this price, surrounded by 32 gigs of RAM and a Ryzen 7, it's so mismatched and out of place, it completely ruins the mini PC. It's easy to fix if you want to spend some more money, but if you wanted to spend some more money, you could have bought a different manufacturer's mini PC that's better equipped, potentially for less cost, and certainly less labor of you opening it up and sourcing an NVMe drive and replacing it, and then you'd have to then clone the operating system over or reinstall the operating system from scratch, which is a lot of investment from an end user on a brand new product that should come out of the package ready to roll, minus, doing the updates. So I am profoundly disappointed. And I thought, well, we have an opportunity to discuss this. Let's go ahead and open it up and see how serviceable it is. And we can try, doing an Acronis clone over to an NVMe drive. I have plenty of spares. Most end users don't have a single spare or even know what it is. And let's see how this opens, because that gives us a good excuse to get in there anyway. I want to find out if this is in fact a fan, because now I don't trust what I'm seeing on the Amazon page. If there's already this omission of what the M.2 drive is. They never state if it's SATA or NVMe. There's no reviewer who seems to acknowledge that this is a SATA drive. And I don't know how often they have changed the hardware in here since this has been out for a couple of years, and I don't know how old the reviews are. So it may have been configured with an NVMe drive months ago, but that does not seem to be the way they're equipping them today. It seems like a pretty sketchy thing to do. I can't believe somebody would say that, oh, we didn't know, because if you have a SATA drive, it only works in one of the M.2s. So if you're building these all day at a factory, and now suddenly you're being told to install this other drive into this other slot, why? Clearly that's done with intention. It's not done out of, we didn't know. Because if they truly didn't know, by installing the SATA drive into the other M.2, the system will not recognize the drive, and vice versa. So let me see how this comes apart here. I believe screws are underneath these sticky feet. Yeah, that's exactly what they did. Not a fan of hiding screws at the bottom of the unit that nobody will see. The sticky feet do not have to cover the screws. The sticky feet could go around the screw. It could go to the left of the screw, to the right of the screw, below the screw, above the screw. Depending on the case, there's plenty of room under here for the sticky feet to be moved slightly around, or the sticky feet could be made with holes in the center of them so access to the screws does not require the sticky foot removal. The problem with removing the sticky feet is oftentimes they will not stick back on with the same strength. Sometimes the sticky material stays stuck to the case instead of the foot. And the more often you do this, the greater your odds of tearing the rubber of the foot, or that the sticky material simply isn't sticky anymore and you find the rubber feet on the floor. And then you have to get some kind of a glue, which is going to make it much harder to remove. Or you go on Amazon to buy more sticky feet. And then if it were me, and I was going to live with a computer with sticky feet like that, I wouldn't open it more than once. And if I was planning on opening it more than once, I would buy brand new sticky feet from Amazon, which is again adding cost to the unit, and I would place them here, 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 and here. You'd never know any difference, and you'd never have to deal with it again. Why the manufacturer insists on doing this, it is beyond any sort of logic or reason. It's certainly not a cost issue. It's just a choice, and I wish they would make better choices for their customers, which is better for them. Now, the good news is the screws are not buried deep in here. They are right on the surface. And let's open this up and see what's inside of here. I do require complete transparency on my videos that we shoot live and unscripted, and pure honesty if I am disappointed or if I can see something that, yeah, I can see how a mistake can get made. So to be clear, I understand how they could say Wi-Fi 6 instead of 6E. I understand how they might say it's got dual LAN or 2.5 gig LAN by mistake. But leaving out that this drive is SATA is pretty critical to hindering the performance of this machine's total capability that has no cost benefit, none whatsoever. So that, I can't find any reasonable excuse why that would happen, and it feels deceitful and wrong regardless of what the intention was. I can't say, but it's at this price point, unacceptable. So what I'm going to do, there also doesn't seem to be any, oh yeah, there's a little lip right here. Right here we have a lip that should release this cover. Sometimes it takes a little thin tool or a thin screwdriver. And if this is a fan, I want to be sure, or there's antennas, not to rip up on this too quickly, or I could rip those wires off and damage the unit. Now, if you cause damage to the unit, that's not a warranty issue, that's a you issue. So again, something's holding us in right here. We saw this before with the other mini PC where there were, in addition to screws, there were some clips. Yeah, so we just bend away on the plastic. Very carefully lift that up. There's no fan here. I don't know what this hole is for. There's no holes for screws to mount to it. And it doesn't seem to be ventilating to anything. There's just a big metal cover over that. That metal cover is going to trap the heat, was ever under it. And I don't understand its purpose for being there. So what I'm going to do is remove this cover. This is highly unusual. One of the initial problems I had when trying to turn this on for the first time, if you were watching yesterday, was that I neither had the power cable nor the HDMI cable in all the way. Not that it's a problem, but it's a little concerning how tight every single port on this computer is. This is my keyboard USB dongle for the keyboard and mouse here. You've seen me use these over the last few years, and I routinely just take it out and slide it into the USB port. There's no sliding it into the USB port on this model. For some reason, it requires a lot of force to get that in there. Now, that's not necessarily bad, but it's not normal. That's not how tight a USB port should be. And hence, when I first turned it on, you know, the HDMI cable required additional force that I'm accustomed to applying, especially on a brand new piece of hardware that I want to be gentle with. I don't want to break it. So when you start adding everything up together, all these little things, I refer to that as death by 1,000 paper cuts. Each little paper cut in and of itself is easy to dismiss, but after a certain amount of them, what goes from an annoyance can go to a very serious medical problem. In much the same way, when manufacturers have oversights or mistakes, it's easy to understand how they can happen. But when they start to stack up on just one particular unit, I got to start wondering what's really going on here. Now, I've removed these 4 screws that hold this metal plate in. I don't normally see a metal plate underneath the cover. That's very unusual. And I don't like that this metal plate has no ventilation. I can only assume, well, you know what, I'm not going to, I'm done with assuming with this manufacturer, because if this is the desperation of the economy, if that's why we're looking at this, we've never had this kind of issue with them before. How desperate are these companies getting to start getting people to spend money? Has it come to having to use inferior parts and to cripple the performance of a machine while still being able to generate a pretty good profit? Because it certainly appears that initially, from my perception, this was a really good and attractive price. All right, well, this appears to be a giant heat sink. That's what I'm looking at here. So why the heat sink has to be any bigger than covering the two M.2 drives, this has some thermal tape. You get no additional thermal tape. We've got a BIOS battery. We've got 2 sticks of 16 gigs of RAM. You know what? I'm just going to bring these up to the camera so you can judge for yourself. In many other mini PCs, like we receive from, say, Minis Forum, we get name brand RAM like Lexar. Here, I don't know what this is. It looks like it's trying to give you the impression that it's Kingston. But a closer look says that's not Kingston. It's DDR4, 3200 speed. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, what's interesting is this port, hard for me to see it when I'm showing it to you. Look at the writing underneath this port. PCIe SATA. So apparently, I'm guessing, it's telling us this is the PCIe slot and this is the SATA slot. Or is it saying this one slot can be either? Our drive manufacturer information and everything on the drive is covered with thermal tape, which we can remove. There's our BIOS battery. And usually under the M.2, we can find a Wi-Fi card. Yeah, right back there. That's typically serviceable if you wanted to remove it, upgrade it, replace it. I was not a fan that this was a MediaTek Wi-Fi card, but it's not that uncommon, so I can't. Again, I can easily see. I can be understanding with simple little mistakes. This takes it too far for me. So let's take the M.2 drive out. That screwdriver is too big. Usually that's the driver I need to remove those screws. That's going to require a precision driver. That's not normal, but okay. Shouldn't have to do this. If this was like a Ryzen 3, if this was more of an entry-level machine, or if this was priced another $60 less, it makes it an easier pill to swallow. But even still, knowing that the whole performance of this machine is being held up by this one drive should never have been placed in here to begin with. I'd almost say the cost of this at $320 on sale would be a good price without this drive. But with this drive, it's adding a burden and a hindrance that is holding the whole performance of the machine up, and everything you do is going to take longer. So it would be better if they forced you to replace it at the same price. Let me rephrase. If they forced you to replace it at a discounted price, or they just didn't include it for the same price, just sell it as a bare bones machine. In fact, you know, sell it at $300, let's say, and tell you you're on your own for your storage and your operating system. Be a bit of a fairer deal, not quite as an extreme deal, but still not a ripoff. So as I take the M.2 drive out, we can see our Wi-Fi card installed in the standard place right there. Yeah, and it doesn't say anything next to the other M.2, so it makes sense this would be the SATA, and this would be the PCIe or NVMe drive. As for who makes this, I don't even know why it has thermal tape on it. It's a SATA drive. It's like carrying an umbrella on a cloudy day that isn't raining. You're not protecting yourself from the sun. You're not protecting yourself from the rain. Why have you opened the umbrella and are you walking under it? There's absolutely no purpose for that thermal tape on a drive this slow. It just won't get that hot. Remember, heat is going to be related to performance. Lower performance, lower heat. Lower heat, less need for additional cooling. So that thermal tape is on unnecessarily. I don't know who Radeon is or what they make, but I see the two notches, which right there indicates to me this is a SATA drive. I haven't seen one of these in years, and I don't expect to find it in a modern day higher performance machine. I can't make heads or tails of that. I don't know why somebody would do this. You've taken a very capable machine and you have voluntarily configured it with a piece of hardware that is critical to this machine's ability to run at its peak performance. The rest of this machine will be waiting on this drive. Now, it normally wouldn't be that big of a deal if this were like a data drive, a spare drive, but as our main boot drive and as the default drive that this comes with at a $320 price, I can look past the no-name brand RAM. I don't have any problem with it. Not quite sure about how warranty is going to be fulfilled on that. I do have a concern about this big metal plate. If in fact the reason for this is to add, heat transfer off of the NVMe drive, why does it go all the way across the RAM? It only needs to be here, and then this should be cut out entirely. That way some air can get in here. Otherwise, what's the point of this vent? So there is no active air cooling in here, and this area can get very, very hot. So I wouldn't put the highest performing drive in there, but I would certainly put a respectable Generation 3 NVMe drive. So let me go over to my inventory. I know I have a lot of these laying around. In fact, probably some I've taken out of other mini PCs that were less expensive than this, to be quite frank, which makes this all the more staggering to discover. I had never seen this coming. This really, really surprised me. If you can't tell from my reaction, it's a very genuine reaction. Never saw this coming. So let me take a look at some NVMe drives I've got here. Oh. Let me just bring these over to the table. We'll look at them together. I don't know what sizes and what brands I've got. They're just sitting on a shelf collecting dust. So you might as well put them to better use than that. This is an HP EX900 250 gig. 256. These are all 200s. Half the capacity of what's in there is 512. Here is a Kingston This is Kingston 512. Let's do this. The good news is they do give you the spare M.2 screw. They've left it in the standoff, so they did that right. I appreciate that. And let's place this into the other M.2 slot right here. And even this isn't going to need a heatsink. We'll use it because we've got it, but it's not required. This isn't that fast. And I would expect to see speeds of, if it's Gen 3, we're looking at 2,500 to 3,500 megabytes a second, which is still 5 to 7 times faster than the one next to it, with the same capacity. And it's not costing me anything because, quite frankly, I've just got it laying around. I'm going to just put this thermal tape on top of here. Usually it goes towards the connector part. That's the part you want to keep cool. The DRAM that's towards the back of the drive where the screw is, you don't so much have to worry about covering that stuff up. The DRAM is not what we're worried about overheating, it's the controller. Well, we're gonna leave all this open because I don't know what other surprises might await me in this process. So until I am confident it's complete, I will wait until then before I reassemble it, and I will remove the SATA drive, securely erase, well, not securely, but reset the drive back to factory and then go put it on the shelf. So should I have some old piece of hardware rolling in from 15 years ago, you know, might need it someday to help revive an old system for a client who's broke and has nothing, and that's all they have. And you know, I've got this thing that's pretty much worthless sitting on my shelf that I took out of a poorly configured machine. Happy to give it a second life where it's in use in a more appropriate environment than in a brand new Ryzen 7 computer. I mean, I still cannot believe that somebody made that decision and diminished the value of this machine significantly in doing so. I'm going to look in here for my Acronis. Where is it? You know, I think I want to take two approaches. Well, let's just try Acronis. I was going to say I could just reinstall Windows and grab the drivers off of the other drive that's already got Windows on it. Everything slid to the back of the drawer. Acronis, where are you? Let's try Acronis 2024 first. See what happens. Grab that. I'm going to leave the network unplugged on this. I do need an HDMI cable though, so we can see what's going on here. And again, I got to make sure that I put a little extra force into this plug because every plug on this is extraordinarily tight and I don't know why. Now, of course, the more you plug and unplug things, the looser these things will get. But man, wow, that's crazy that it's that tight. For some reason, it's already powered itself on. Let's go ahead and switch over to the output of this and let's find out what it's doing. Likely it's going to be booting to this drive here. It's got a little red LED lit up on it that shows it's active. And we'll have to get into the BIOS and tell it we want to boot from this flash drive. Because this is a bootable drive, it's going to default to this one first. So let me switch over to camera 2. Yeah, we're already at the desktop. So it's not that 550 megabytes per second is a slouch. It's that this is a brand new machine and it's utilizing older hardware inside of it, and it's not fully disclosing this information on the website. And some of the information on the website is just flat out wrong. And you combine these two things together, the misinformation and omission of critical information, it certainly makes me very concerned about what the motivation is here. It no longer seems to be an innocent mistake anymore. So I'm going to go back over to, let's see, Windows Update. Remember, we're not plugged into the network, but it doesn't matter. I'll go to Advanced Options. I will go to Recovery. I will go to Advanced Startup here. We'll click Restart Now. And that's going to get us a menu upon restarting. And one of the options will be to restart into the BIOS. Then you don't have to worry about pressing the right key at the right time and then you miss it and you got to wait for Windows to finish and keep doing this over and over until you finally get in there. The Elgato notice on the screen is my video capture card saying there's no signal coming into me to display. Now you'll see the system starting to reboot with the standard power on self-test or post screen. And we're going to hit here in the sub menu here that'll pop up. We want to go to Troubleshoot. And we want to go to Advanced Options and UEFI Firmware Settings and hit Restart one more time. Now when it restarts, it should default by taking us right into that BIOS without us doing anything, pressing any buttons. Once we're in the BIOS, we can tell it we want it to boot to the USB drive instead of to the SATA drive. We get in here, it's an interesting look at the BIOS nonetheless. It's not a graphical user interface BIOS. It does have TPM. It does meet Windows 11 requirements. You know, it's got everything that is good, and then just configured poorly. So it does see our Kingston NVMe drive we put in there, and I'm just going to leave everything alone. I don't need to change anything in here. I'm just showing you what the options are. There does seem to be a lack of real in-depth information on this machine. It's not covered very well here on YouTube, so there's a good reason for me to do it. Now there is a boot override here, and we want to go to the UEFI OS, which is our SanDisk 3.2 USB flash drive. No other media we have is made by SanDisk, so I know that's my flash drive. I select it and press enter. You just use your arrow keys on your keyboard and the enter key on your keyboard to choose your selection. And now we should be booting off of the flash drive, and it should take us into an Acronis bootable rescue media. Once we're in the rescue media, as long as our keyboard and mouse are not configured with Bluetooth, because that would require a Windows driver. These are standard wireless, 2.4 gig wireless that doesn't require any Bluetooth driver. I strongly recommend people do not buy Bluetooth keyboards and mice unless perhaps you have an Apple product or a tablet or a smartphone or a TV, because those Bluetooth devices will not work outside of Windows on a Windows-based computer. And it can add some frustration to whatever frustration you have that's getting you to this point. It starts to pile up. So I'm going to go to, let's make this, can I make it bigger? We're going to go to Tools and Utilities, Clone Disk. We'll leave Automatic selected, just hit Next. Our source drive is the serial ATA, SATA. The second drive listed is our USB flash drive we just booted from. The new NVMe drive we put in is not on this list because that NVMe drive was factory reset. There's nothing to clone off of it. It's a blank drive. Acronis is intelligent enough to know you don't want to clone a blank drive, so it does not come up as an option for your source. So selecting the source as our serial ATA, hit Next. Now it's going to look for a potential target. At this point, we should find the NVMe drive from Kingston listed, with the interface being NVMe, sometimes could be listed as PCIe. Here, disk 2 says it's not initialized. And if I scroll to the right, you'll see that it says its interface is NVMe. That's what I want. Next, we're going to replace a disk on this machine. Next. What I love about Acronis versus other cloning software is there's very little configuration. It's intelligently selecting the automatic mode that is most likely what you want to do. And if you just keep clicking next, it does all the thinking for you. This makes every clone happen with consistency and a much greater chance of success. Now it does say that the selected disk will be restored as GPT, and that's fine, that's great. So again, Acronis has done all this thinking for you, so these aren't things you then have to correct after your clone to get your clone to work, which many other cloning software require you to do. So depending on how nerdy you are and how much you enjoy all that technical stuff, for most people, we just want to get the job done and move on. So for me, you know, I'm trying to work on multiple computers every day and trying to help my customers quickly and accurately so I can get paid, keep my customer happy with minimizing their downtime, and keep other customers happy by still having time left in my day to go visit them next. I don't have the luxury of sitting at home just to play with something to see how it works, just because. If you do, hey, I'm not discouraging that. I'm trying to earn a living. So I'm trying to show you that if you want to earn a living, or you're dealing with somebody who wants to earn a living, they're not working like a home user. If they are, they probably won't be earning a living very long. It's not putting any degradation down to one or the other. It's just simply stating there's a logic and a reason behind the business practices versus a home user's practices, and mixing and matching them will result in an unpleasant experience most of the time. Now, this shouldn't take very long because we only have Windows installed on it. It's not like we've got a computer that's 2 or 3 years old that's got the drive jammed up with stuff. And we can't go any faster, no matter how fast the NVMe drive is, it can't pull the data off of the SATA drive any faster than the SATA drive can deliver it. So with the NVMe drive being multiple times faster than the SATA drive, the NVMe drive is being held back right now during this cloning process that likely would have already been done had we be cloning NVMe to NVMe with the same amount of data on the same kind of hardware. On the other hand, if we had the NVMe drive to begin with, we wouldn't need to do the clone that we're doing now. So it's like a series of dominoes that falls. Nonetheless, even at the slower SATA speed that the NVMe drive is being held to, this shouldn't take very long. And while we're waiting for it, let me just take a look over in the chat because I haven't been over there. And let's see what you guys have to say, because I have been missing the conversation happening in here. So let me scroll back a little bit. Oh, Matthew Burden renewed membership, now a member for 34 months. Hello, Carey and Mara, and all in chat. Good to see you. Thank you, Matthew. It looks like my YouTube studio fell back for some reason. Let me refresh that page, because I should be seeing the desktop over here. Okay, there it is. That's just on my side. Let's see. Mark Leibowitz says Chicago checking in. Welcome in, Mark. Raven 4K says hello, as does Mecha Cameron. Ajin Guy joins us and says hello. Todd Wickham says, thanks, Carey. I'm going to build a new computer this summer, and you helped me decide that I should go with M.2 or SSD. I'm going with SSD. So SSD is a solid state drive, and M.2 is the interface, the form factor of the plug. So you can get an SSD drive in M.2. You can get an SSD drive in SATA. You can get an SSD drive in NVMe M.2, or you can get an SSD drive, an SSD in NVMe M.2, as well as SATA M.2. And then there's, on top of that, an NVMe format that uses the, what is effectively like the SAS connector. So the confusion between the technology of the storage type, the protocol of which the data is being transferred, and the interface in which it plugs in are not necessarily mutually exclusive. Mark Leibowitz said I bought a similar Ace Magic model with an NGFF/SATA SSD, and the Amazon description disclosed it, but I wasn't even looking for it. Well, okay, that's on you then. He said the performance was still fine for what was needed. Again, it's not so much of for what was needed, for me anyway, as it is for what we're paying. I feel for what I'm paying, I don't see any justification behind this loss of performance, regardless if I need it or not. I feel like I paid for it. So if I paid for it, I want it. Now, whether or not I use it, that's none of nobody's business. I just want to make sure I'm getting the value that I thought I was getting. So what I want to do now, I need to go back full screen on my side, which means I have to hide the chat room. I'm going to click OK because this clone has finished. And at this point now, if we go back to camera 1 here, and you can see me, I'm simply going to pull the plug that cuts power to the machine. I am done with my Acronis rescue disc, so that goes back in the drawer. It's a tool. It's like a screwdriver or a pair of pliers. I don't use it on every job, and when I need it, it makes my job a lot easier. Finally, I'm going to go ahead and take the SATA drive out. These do not get moved around. This new Kingston drive will not work in that other slot, and the drive in this slot will not work in the slot I've used for the Kingston. Those slots are specific to SATA only or PCIe only, and only the appropriate drive will work in the appropriate slot. This is not a normal restriction found in today's mini PCs or even mini PCs of just a few years ago. This is a highly unusual requirement that, again, for the price, I'm not going to use the second slot. I don't care what it is. And in fact, I would rather they just remove the second slot altogether, personally. Because by putting it there, you're encouraging people to use it. And by encouraging people to use it, you're encouraging more heat in this. And the more heat you put in this, the more degradation you put on those parts. That leads to, it's going to lead to a failure that much sooner in most cases. All for what? Because you just didn't want to plug a USB drive in. By the way, if I plug a USB drive into this, I imagine I can get about 500 megabytes per second through the USB port on an external SSD. So it's basically the same performance as this without confining it and restricting it and limiting its access to having to remove rubber feet and having to remove a plate. And then if anything happens to the computer, let's say the power supply dies, now I've lost all my data access to everything inside. So just keep all your data external. It's so much cheaper, so much easier, and you have more freedom to be able to just simply plug that drive into another computer as needed and if needed, versus trying to jam everything into a tiny box. It's just a bad, you're just not thinking of the future. All you're thinking about is today. And that will always come back to bite you every single time. There is nobody who can avoid that, especially in a design like this. It is guaranteed to happen. It might take years and years and years, or it might take weeks. I don't know, but I'm telling you, you guarantee that's going to happen to you. I just can't say when. You could long since retire the machine or sell it before it happens, but why would you invite and play with something if it's that important that it's got your data on it? And if the price is the same, why not just go through the USB port for the same price and the same speed? Why would you not want that added convenience? It baffles my mind. I don't get it. Consumers watching videos often get ideas they just don't think through. Maybe because it's cool, maybe there's an emotional need, or maybe they're just not aware there are alternatives that have far more upsides with no downsides compared to just sticking with what's in there. So try as much as possible to keep the dependency of you to that machine as distant as you can. So if anything does happen to this machine, whether it's stolen or gets a virus, whatever happens, it doesn't turn on one day. And it doesn't have to be this machine specifically, just any computer you rely on. If you keep putting all your eggs in one basket, what if something happens to the basket? And what if I told you you could buy 2 baskets for the price of 1? What excuse do you have? So it's getting harder and harder for me to have sympathy for people who sit there and make these bad decisions and then freak out and post these, panicked questions of, oh my gosh, what do I do? They don't have a backup. They put 2 drives in an enclosed area with no active cooling because they wanted more space to store more junk, and this junk is critically important to them, or it isn't, but the machine that they're storing the junk on is also being used for a critically important thing. And at the same time, they're also using it as a toy. But now, as a tool, they can't get paid. They cannot earn a living. And they start freaking out. And they created this problem. And I make money by solving it. I am not doing my business any favors by giving you this advice. If everybody listened to what I'm saying, I would essentially have no business. I'm just telling you. I like being in business. But at the same time, being honest and clear and making sure people understand consequences of their decisions. I got to go into this with a clean conscience. I got to say, I do not feel bad for charging people who don't listen. This is the cost of your education. It's never going to happen to you until it happens to you. And after 34 years in this industry, human behavior has not changed. Not one bit. From time to time, I do see people tell me their stories about how they learned their lessons, and they will never do that again. But they were told long before it happened, and they just didn't believe it until they experienced it. Your choice. I'm not telling anybody what to do. If you want to do it the hard way and you want to wait until the inevitable occurs, it's never going to be on a specific timeline, but I can guarantee you're heading that way. I can't tell you when you're going to get there, but you're heading that way. So don't expect anything any different when it happens. You say, now I understand what Carey was talking about, and now I'm screwed. So I hope you do, at the very least, maintain regular backups, because that's the one magic thing that solves all problems. It solves ransomware, viruses, system failures, thefts, everything you can possibly imagine. It is the antidote to everything that can go wrong with a computer. And when it's so inexpensive to use a program like Acronis, or heck, you can use anything really. Just get a damn backup. And then that way your crisis is going to be far less stressful and anxiety ridden and much cheaper to resolve, because you would be able to do it on your own instead of hiring somebody to fix whatever the problem is and recover your data. So anyway, let's move on. So we'll turn that back on. Let's jump over to the output of this computer here and see if it boots. Ideally, this should be a clean transfer of all the programs and operating system, activation, everything should still continue to work as it did before. Fully transparent to the customer, who should not notice any difference whatsoever, except when we run Crystal Disk Mark or when we start loading programs, they should start loading significantly faster. Now, as I mentioned, as we reach higher and higher speeds, you reach a point of diminishing returns and higher expense. But jumping from SATA to NVMe, especially when the price is the same, results in only positive benefits. There's no negative side to it. And how much you notice the speed difference, which is oftentimes minimal 5 times faster, is still nonetheless a non-debatable significant increase of 400%. But let's just verify that. I'm going to start Crystal Disk Mark again. And Disk Mark 64. And let's run Crystal Disk Info to see what our interface is. So back over on Crystal Disk Info first. And these are free portable applications you can run on your own computer. I'm not doing anything here you can't do at home if you want to see how your computer compares. And what this is telling us is our transfer mode is generation 3 times 4, and our capability is generation 4 times 4. So I'm trying to remember which one is the motherboard and which one is the drive. I think the drive is Gen 4 and the motherboard is Gen 3. I'm trying to remember what order that's in. Current mode is Gen 3, supported mode is Gen 4. So I'm guessing it's telling me that this drive is a Gen 4 drive and that we've plugged it into a Gen 3 slot on the motherboard. Given that this motherboard has an M.2 SATA, I doubt this is a Gen 4 supported motherboard. Although I thought that Ryzen 7 would support it. The difference between Gen 3 and Gen 4, again, as we reach these higher and higher speeds, becomes more and more negligible outside of benchmarks. So we are in Gen 3. So let's see what this does. If this is as what I think it is a Gen 4 NVMe drive that's middling Gen 4, that means it probably performs somewhere around 4,700 to 5,000 megabytes a second. But being plugged in to a slot that's only Gen 3 means Gen 3 can only max out at about 3,600. And since that maximum does not reach the maximum of this drive, we should see the full saturation of 3,600. In other words, this is like a high performance Gen 3 when it's really a low performance Gen 4. Or a middling performance Gen 4. In other words, this should not cause this drive to overheat or work too hard because we're only basically utilizing 75 to 80% of its capacity of performance. So let's hit the all button here and let's take a look at our numbers, but I'm fully expecting to see the full generation 3 data saturation maximum speed. Yeah, 3,721 is one of the largest numbers I've seen come out of Gen 3, but it's still lower than what this drive is capable of if it were to be placed in a Gen 4 slot. But there are higher end Gen 4 drives that can go faster than this one. But if you're limited by the speed of this plug that you're plugging it into, that's as fast as you're going to go, just like USB, or just like when you drive your car on the freeway. Your car might be capable of going very, very fast, but the traffic in front of you will prevent you from doing that. It's no problem with the car. And of course, the car just kind of moving along at regular traffic speeds likely means better gas mileage and better efficiency and lower temperatures on the engine, more than likely. Now, this is, in my opinion, how this machine should have been equipped, or at the very least, even if we got half of that with, say, a Gen 3 basic budget NVMe drive, we still should be seeing over 2,500, which is still 5 times more than what it had. So I'm baffled at who made this decision. And it's disappointing because if it was equipped this way, that $320 price point it's a great deal. But now, this one thing that went unnoticed and this information omitted, where they did not commit in the description to saying anything other than M.2. They didn't say if it was M.2 SATA. They didn't say if it was M.2 NVMe. And they didn't say if it was Gen 3 or Gen 4. It just says there's one NVMe slot and one PCIe slot. So obviously, I feel that it would only be just for me to write a review to correct this information so that anybody buying it understands what to expect if they read the reviews. That's not being fully disclosed in the product description. I will also advise Kamrui that they should be updating the description to be more accurate and precise so that there's no potential for assuming malice. Just kind of curious what our write speed's going to be up here. I expect it to be the same. Again, the Gen 4 drive can go much, much faster than the Gen 3 plug we've plugged it into. And okay, so the write speed on this Kingston model is a bit slower, but still 5 to 6 times faster than the SATA M.2 we pulled out of there that has the exact same capacity. So I don't know how you can explain this to me, but to me it's inexcusable. Very poor decision making from whoever said that this was okay at Kamrui. It's not okay. And it now makes me very skeptical of this brand now. Because where before, and from previous experience, we have seen common little mistakes in product descriptions, this feels a little more purposeful and hidden. It feels that way. And now anytime I get a Kamrui computer, I'm going to be a bit more skeptical and less positive assumption now that we have a reason. I might also be more reluctant to review them in the future if we're finding this is the new norm for them, then it's not something I can recommend. And if I feel like this is not a product I can recommend, when I'm asked if I'll review it, I would rather be polite and say no thank you than to say, yeah, I want to make a video beating somebody up. It's never my intent. The reason I give them product time for free on this channel is to educate my viewers on what I think is positive. Hey, look at this deal. Be aware of this price. This might meet your needs. I think it's a really good machine. As far as quality control goes, I don't have any issues with reliability from Kamrui. I don't like the rubber feet, but they're not the only ones who do that, covering up screws. I don't like this big metal plate. This seems to be more or less pointless. And I don't like this hole in the bottom that doesn't seem to do anything other than imply there's something under there, which there isn't. Defeating the purpose. Why is it there? Doesn't seem to do a damn thing. There's not much in the way of any airflow that's going to get through this metal plate. So it feels very deceitful. Whether or not that's their intent, I can't say. And in and of these things by themselves as a paper cut, no need to go get that treated. But when there's 1,000 paper cuts, your life may be in danger. And we're reaching a point of so many paper cuts, so little tiny things, they're starting to add up now. And it has reverted my recommendation to avoid this product. I did recommend yesterday, under the assumption that this fit the normal we've expected from Kamrui in the past. Normal has changed, and I want you to be aware of it. And if I had known that going into this, I would have politely declined reviewing it. We wouldn't even bring it up for discussion, because why would I give that product attention just to tear it down? It's not my style. I'd rather spend my time building something up, making you aware that there's a great product at a great price, and you better get it if you're interested before they sell out. I had every impression that this was no different than the last few mini PCs that I've been delighted with. And those recommendations that I initially made, I stand by. This is very unusual for me to revert back and to uncover something I didn't know I needed to look for. And here we are with a part 2 that normally wouldn't even exist, but I feel it's very critical since it completely changes my outcome and perception of what I thought was a great value. With this new knowledge and information, no. And this doesn't apply to all Kamrui PCs, but this specific model is one I cannot recommend. And I strongly recommend you buy something more for your money. I think for $320, you can get a better equipped machine and you don't deal with any of this nonsense. If the price of this machine dropped, maybe it was $245, $250, maybe. It still doesn't feel right to have a SATA-based drive on a Ryzen 7. That's just one barrier I cannot get past. It doesn't make any sense. If this was a Ryzen 3, if this was some entry-level budget machine, if anything, you need that NVMe even more so on budget machines. But if you're spending just a couple of dollars, you can't be picky. That's what you get for a couple of dollars. And if it's priced accordingly for what you're getting, I don't have a problem with that. What else do you expect, right? But I expected better than this for this price. All right, let me go back over to the chat and see what you guys have to say here. I am so sad that I have to say that about Kamrui. I didn't want to, but I'm also not going to cover it up. So referring to whether or not a customer uses the full capacity of the performance isn't of my concern. My concern is that you're getting what you pay for. So if we have a budget of what this machine costs, which is currently $320, there are other mini PCs that fall at $320 or less that aren't limited like this. So why would you spend the same amount of money on the Kamrui PC when you can get the same or more from another manufacturer for the same or less amount of money? This is all this is about. What are you paying for? I don't care how you use it. That's not relevant to me. At least it's relevant to me if I'm building you a computer, right? So I know what to build you. But if what we're doing is we're focused on price and value, then for this price, I think you could find a better equipped machine. So why would you buy that? And it goes back to price. If this were significantly cheaper, you could argue that. But if it's not cheaper, I'm confused. Mecha Cameron said, how many stars would I give this? I give it 1 star. And the 1 star would be based on the fact that there's a lot of product description misinformation from saying it's dual LAN and 2.5 gig, which it is not. The Wi-Fi 6, that's truly 6E, is in their deficit, not mine. The undisclosed slow SATA drive and the fact that it has 2 M.2s that both don't support PCIe, never mind Gen 3 or Gen 4. The fact that there is a second M.2 in there, I would rather see removed than have it be SATA. And in this whole scenario, it wouldn't even have been possible or an option for the manufacturer to configure in this way for whatever reason they did it. This big metal plate that seems to be there for no apparent reason on a slow drive that doesn't need any cooling doesn't make any sense to me, and it restricts the cooling. The holes in the bottom of this, maybe this carries over from another model and that does have a fan, and so they just use the same one. But when you combine, you know, that ventilation with this big metal plate up against it, it doesn't make any sense. Now, all of this is minor, but there's too many minor things going on. It's not just one little thing here or one little thing there. And the straw that broke the camel's back is that SATA drive. I was more than willing to accept these errors, these omissions, based on the price. Now, this additional omission has significantly devalued the machine, and it no longer makes sense at this price point to purchase. I think for the same amount of money, you could buy something better equipped, and at the very least equal to, but with the faster drive. I haven't seen a SATA drive installed in a new mini PC in years. I did not expect to find one now, and if I did, it wouldn't have been on a Ryzen 7, okay? It would have been on a Ryzen 3. So for all those reasons, it's a 1 star for me. This doesn't make any sense. The fact that they've equipped it with 32 gigs of RAM suggests it's equipped better than the average Joe machine, right? The average budget machine would have 8 gigs, maybe 16. But they put 32 in here because it's a Ryzen 7, right? So Ryzen 7, that implies you need more power and performance. So let's make sure to give you more RAM so that your performance can improve under those kind of use case scenarios. And then they undermine themselves by putting in a SATA drive, which the rest of the computer has to constantly wait on, and slows the entire computer, regardless of how capable it is. It's just right back to being in a very fast car, but you're on a crowded freeway, and you cannot utilize the full potential of your car because the traffic in front of you won't, they're blocking the way. And this drive, this is the equivalent of the traffic that sits in front of you. So that shatters the whole deal for me. It's just one step too far, inexcusable. I can't even come up with any imaginary reason that the company would reply to me where this makes any sense. Other than we had a bunch of these old drives laying around and we thought we'd throw them in here to get rid of them. And in doing so, crippled the performance of the machine, defeating the whole point of buying a Ryzen 7. Go buy a Ryzen 5. See what I'm getting at? Doesn't make any sense. So thank you for the question there, Becca Cameron. Fair enough. David Graham said they appear to be a secondhand parts dealer putting together cheap machines. Secondhand NVMe drives that are 512 gig aren't any more expensive than these, and certainly if they are, not by more than a couple of bucks. To the point where it's crippling the machine's performance and overall view of customer experience, of how they interpret your company as being a good company or a bad company. Or how much are you willing to sell your company's reputation for? $2 a unit? Or would you just rather add that $2 cost to make sure that customers come away happy, feel like they got a good value, and recommend and refer you not only to their friends and family, potentially to their bosses at work, and perhaps buy other units for friends and family, or future units that they need to upgrade, that they come back again. All for $2. You lose all of that? So even if you're gathering parts that others aren't using, you can still build a quality product. Doesn't automatically mean the product's bad. Barry Klein says, please get off the fence and tell us what you really think. Graham Edwards says, hello from the UK. Welcome in, Graham. Kevin says, my internet provider is using IP version 4, so I'm always stuck waiting for internet pages to load when other providers are using IPv6. IPv6 and 4 are the same speeds. There's no difference in performance. I don't know where'd you get that information. Let me rephrase that. Tell me where you heard that, because that's a new one. Bill says he's going to go do an Acronis backup right now. Good night, all. Good for you. Who is the seller? Well, the Amazon link there, excuse me, in the video notes below our video will take you to Amazon if you want to investigate that. And that's a question you're fully capable of answering by just taking a look at it. We're certainly not hiding anything from you guys, and we want you to be able to delve in, each and every one of you, in whatever way, shape, or detail level that each of you want, but not necessarily to initially spend too much time with any one individual when other people have no interest in such detail. But we do provide that information so you can investigate it at whatever level of depth that you deem appropriate. And just click on the Show More button below the video to see the comment, not the comments, the video description that'll take you to the link. It is coming from Amazon Prime, so 30-day returns are still there, right? In this case, if I would have bought this thinking that I was getting an NVMe drive of 512 gig, the fact that I did not have 2 LANs as advertised would be concerning. The fact that those LANs advertised as both 1 and 2.5 gig, there's only 1 instead of 2, it only runs at 1. That might be a reason to send it back. The fact that it came with Wi-Fi 6E instead of Wi-Fi 6 might have felt like I got away with something a little extra and I didn't have to pay for it. But then when I find out the drive is only running SATA, I would not replace the drive. I would put the unit back in the box. I would return it back to Amazon for free, and I would tell Amazon this product did not arrive as described. I do not want an exchange. I want a full refund. And make sure you keep your box and packing, put it all back the same way you bought it. And Amazon will refund your money in full within 30 days with no cost to you to return the item and no qualifier. Doesn't matter what your reason is, it's irrelevant. They'll still ask you, but you're not obligated to give them an answer or for that answer to have any specific benchmark. You just don't want it for any reason. You want to return it. For that reason, I buy a lot of product from Amazon. The sad part is Kamrui sent us this machine for free to review. And by being honest about it, it could potentially mean Kamrui doesn't want to send us anything anymore. On the other hand, if this is what Kamrui thinks is acceptable, then it's mutually agreed upon. We don't want to see anymore. So this is the problem with reviews being honest, is you could potentially damage a relationship. But if the product is acceptable to the manufacturer and they think you're the one that, you know, the reason they sent it to you and spent the money to get us the unit was they thought they were going to get a good review. And I thought I was going to give it a good review, which is why I said yes. If they respond saying, hey, we're going to make sure we correct this, then if they want to send us something in the future, we'll keep an open mind unless we see a pattern. On the other hand, if they say, hey, thanks for nothing, you know, back at you. Because I'm feeling like they're trying to slip one by me here. Or we have a different system of values and they don't know who I am. And if they'd have known who I was, they would have known better than sending me this unit. So either way, I do feel being honest is, at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I keep my integrity. And if my values do not align with those of certain sellers, the world's a big place and there's lots of other creators and influencers that would be a better fit. Hopefully, my genuine hope is they appreciate the honest feedback. We're telling them how to make the product more valuable and more desirable to a potential consumer. It's not meant to insult them. However, this is so unusual. I am concerned. We'll see where it goes from here, what kind of response we get. And until I get such a response, at least as far as this specific model goes, I cannot recommend it. As for other models, I would be very cautious and just double checking. Maybe look for YouTube reviews or Amazon reviews that might alert you to some things. And barring that, make sure it's an Amazon, purchase it from Amazon where you have the free 30-day return window. So you can decide for yourself if it's uncertain. and be able to get a full 100% money back guarantee without having to pay to return it, without a restocking fee, so long as you send back everything. I have to send back the box. I have to send back anything that was enclosed in the box, the power supply, the power plug, the instructions, any foam that was in there, put it all back just the way you got it. Don't be a thief. Don't steal anything. If you want a full refund, return the full product. If it came with a little bag of screws, put that little bag of screws back in there. If you've lost it, why did you not plan ahead? Why would you so quickly dispose of a box and materials before you've satisfied yourself that the unit doesn't need to be returned? And what happens after that is on you. If you want to try and scam Amazon out of the money, well, you've effectively stolen from them for whatever justification you have. I just think that is unexcusable. People do it anyway. Some people get away with it. Some people get some of their refund held back for the cost of replacing what's ever missing. If I give you a $10 bill, and that $10 bill isn't going into a machine, like the machine's not accepting it, and the reason you wanted the $10 bill from me was to serve this purpose that it's not working. So you want the $10 back you gave me, but in return, you're only giving me a fraction of my $10 bill back. You've ruined my $10 bill. You have not returned the entire $10 bill to me, but you want your full $10 back. That's not our deal, right? Now you're trying to scam me. So this results in a very unpleasant discourse between two people who think the other one's ripping them off. So as long as you're not returning 100% of everything you received, I would not expect a 100% refund. Although with Amazon, you'll usually still get it anyway. That's a gamble. But 100% of the time, if you put it all back the way you got it, you will receive 100% of your refund 100% of the time. And you can sleep well at night knowing you didn't steal anything from anybody. Not that these things in and of themselves are that expensive, but if a lot of people do it and we're missing a $1 bracket and we have 100 returns, that's $100 spent on replacement brackets plus the labor and everything to put it all back. And then they have to sell the unit as used, which often is less money there. It's just typically then just put in the trash can and taken as a loss. And after so many losses, either the company takes their business elsewhere or just goes out of business because the consumers have more or less put them out of business, or they have to raise their prices to accommodate all of the theft that's happening, whether intentional or not, which makes the products less desirable, which leads to the company going out of business. So you're not just doing it for you, you're doing it because it's the right thing to do, and that you have proper expectations that you do get that 100% refund if you returned 100% of what you received. It's that simple. You don't need the box that this box came in, but you definitely need the packaging. And even when you don't need it, you should still return it, in my opinion, because what are you going to do with it? Anyway, running businesses with consumers can be frustrating because they often have no real idea of how massive a little tiny thing can grow in a financial deficit for companies that are making very little profit to begin with, which is probably what attracted you to buy it. Anyway, the company policies deal with this. It's not my decision to make, but I will tell you that they have the right to withdraw some of your refund or restrict it to whatever it costs to replace whatever you didn't return. And if you're expecting a full return of 100% of what you spent, you better return 100% of what you received. Okay, with that, let me just take another look here in the chat to see if there's any other comments or questions that I can answer for you guys today. When it's all said and done, the way this is configured now is how it should have come out of the box, in my opinion. I'm going to put it all right back together, and if this was $319 with an NVMe drive, it's back to getting my recommendation, along with the corrections on the product description, correcting that it's not a dual LAN, it's a single LAN, it's not 2.5 gig, it's 1 gig, it is not Wi-Fi 6, it's Wi-Fi 6E, which is a good thing. Once they make all these corrections and get their act together, if they do that, it may be worth another look. We'll wait and see how they respond and if any changes are made. And if I'm made aware of any, I'll let you know. Does Amazon even check? Yes, Amazon does check. Amazon is attacked by scammers in so many different ways. It's costing them literally millions of dollars in return, to the event that they have banned some people from ever buying from Amazon again. They have to check because they don't know what's in the box. There could be an unrelated, old brick inside this box instead of a computer. I promise you, they look. And the more money that Amazon loses, the more carefully they start looking. And when the economy's tight like it's been, it's probably going to continue. Those losses hurt even more to Amazon. It hurts more than the individual seller as well. So when consumers start trying to exploit that, Amazon's pretty quick to catch on. Because if Amazon waits too late, the damage can be very difficult for even a company as big as Amazon to recover from without some pretty serious consequences. So they don't really have any choice. If you work at Amazon and you deal with their returns, you'll find out firsthand it's not an easy job and what's expected of you. And if you fail to live up to that, they're just going to let you go. Iceman with a $5 super chat. Thank you, Iceman, for supporting the channel. John Williams says, thanks in all the inspiration you share with us. Hit the thumbs up. Yeah, I appreciate the thumbs up button. That's cool. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more like it, that's how you let a content creator know. That's also how you let the YouTube algorithm know you'd like to see more of this type of content suggested to you from channels perhaps you don't even know exist. So you're really hitting the thumbs up at the end of the day for you in order to train the algorithm. Just like you would hit a thumbs up on Spotify or Pandora or Netflix, you're not giving a thumbs up to the actors. You're giving a thumbs up to the algorithm so it understands what content you like. So that's the primary purpose behind thumbs up. With regards to how your search engine, the YouTube search results and algorithm work, no one's been able to prove anything. They keep saying it helps my channel when you hit thumbs up. That's all a bunch of nonsense and conjecture. Nobody knows how the algorithm works, and nobody can prove that that's true. It's also difficult to prove that it's not true. So as long as the jury's out on that, for me personally, I think you hit the thumbs up for you, not for me. And that benefits you as a viewer, that when you're looking at other videos to watch, the YouTube recommendations will get more accurate. The more often you use that thumbs up or even the thumbs down, if it's content you don't want to see, you can right click on that channel and say, never recommend this channel to me. You're not doing that to punish the creator, because it doesn't punish the creator. It doesn't hurt the creator's search results. I'm sure it doesn't, although I don't have proof of that. What it's doing is it's training the algorithm that you're not interested in that kind of content so that it won't continue showing you that kind of content. And the more you thumbs up and the more you say, hey, I'm not interested, the more refined and more accurate those recommendations get. And for you to not see that it's benefiting you, for you to only do that for the content creator, may not have the best end result for you if you're still getting a bunch of unrelated recommendations from YouTube, because it just can't quite grasp what the heck you're interested in, because you're only doing it for a creator instead of doing it for yourself. But you don't have to do it either way. You can continue to manually look for things and get random recommendations from YouTube and not respond to those recommendations as positive or negative. YouTube can also tell by whether or not you clicked on a video and how long you've watched it, so that it doesn't solely rely on thumbs up. The fact that you watched it and you clicked on it is almost like the same effect. And that helps a content creator, because actually watching the video is what the content creator's paid on. Content creator's not paid on subscribers. It's not paid on likes. Never has been. And subscribers are only good to a content creator if you're selling your subscribers. You have to know what each subscriber is worth. and how many you have to determine what your value is to a sponsor outside of YouTube. Within YouTube, it's completely valueless. It may have some impact on search engine results, but we don't know for sure. What else can I tell you? We certainly appreciate the thought, nonetheless. The thumbs up certainly isn't hurting anything. And when people take the time to do that, we certainly appreciate it, even though the end result at the, in reality is more emotional than it is anything actual measurable. But it's the thought that counts, I suppose. Ron Hillier says, I looked at every description of this PC on Amazon. It says it's only M.2 SSD, nothing about NVMe. Yeah, but nothing about SATA either. That's what I'm saying. They did not disclose one way or the other, but they do disclose the ports on the motherboard as being one is PCIe and the other is SATA. But they don't say which one they're using. I assumed, with the price difference being essentially the same between the same capacity of SATA and NVMe or PCIe, that they would do what literally every other mini PC manufacturer at every price range has done for the last 4 or 5 years, if not more, probably more than that. And the default is NVMe. The fact that this even has an M.2 SATA was a bit concerning to me, but I thought, well, I'm not using it either way, so what do I care? And I assumed the main drive would be NVMe because I don't see any cost beneficial to not doing it that way. And certainly at a Ryzen 7, where would it make any sense to make a SATA drive your one and only boot drive? Nobody would do that, surely. Well, they did do it, and stop calling me Shirley. There you go. And that's what these live unboxing and overview videos are about. We want to see in reality what's really happening in real time, and this is how long it took me to discover it. It wasn't until last night that I got that far in my testing. I can't put the cart before the horse, and I had no heads up to alert me that that's something I should have checked, because I've never had to check that before, ever. So this sets a new precedent, and not a good way. And like I said, we'll just have to wait and see how the company responds. In the meantime, I cannot recommend this. For $320, you can buy a better machine. And by better, I mean, you could still get a 512 gig SSD, but one that's much, much faster. You could still get a Ryzen 7, maybe even something faster. But at the very least, you could match everything on this computer with the faster NVMe drive of the same capacity and likely pay less for it. So why would anybody buy this? At that price, it doesn't add up. David Graham says they even cheaped out on the motherboard. Well, granted, the motherboard USB is only 3.2, 10 gig per second, but 10 gig per second's pretty darn fast. I mean, I don't have an issue with that. If it were 20 gig per second, that'd be better. But as we keep bringing the price down, we have to adjust our expectations in accordance to what we're spending in order to determine, is this a reasonable value or is this a ripoff, right? And your values and my values may not be the same. What I think I should get for $1 and what you think you should get for $1 may be very far apart. So I can only come from the aspect of running a business in Phoenix, the cost of living in Phoenix, and the type of computers I've been selling to clients over the years, over a large scale, over a large period of time, that evaluates in my mind what a good deal is under all of these variables that may be very different for you if you live in a different part of the country or a different country entirely, or if you have different ideas of what is a bare minimum or what is acceptable or excusable versus one is completely inexcusable. Neither one of us would be wrong on that. It's just that I would not sell this as equipped to a customer and put my name on it because it would make me look bad. I hold my business to a higher standard. And if I wouldn't use this, I wouldn't recommend you use it either. But that's just my opinion. And those are the reasonings on how I got to that opinion. Remember, when customers buy computers from me, they're not buying Kamrui. They're trusting me to make a good decision for them for value, quality, performance, reliability, security. It has to meet what I require, because at the end of the day, It's a reflection on me. If my clients feel as though I have let them down, it would be fully understandable that they would take their business somewhere else. If I kept doing that, I probably wouldn't have any clients left. So if I wouldn't sell this to a client, I wouldn't recommend this to you, any of you. And that's the reasons why. It's not just because. There's a logical, sustainable business model that I have no choice to maintain unless I'm ready to retire. And I hope that day never comes. I love doing what I'm doing. But just because I'm reviewing it doesn't automatically mean I like it. But if I didn't think I was going to like it, I would have never reviewed it to begin with. This very rarely ever happens on this channel. But because it's live, I'm just as surprised as you are. But it is what it is, and we're going to call it what it is. Makes me sad to be put in this situation. It's awkward, and I would rather not be in the situation. I wish there were more videos on YouTube about this model. On the other hand, that makes this video even more important for anybody that wants to know about it. Now, once they know, if they still decide to buy it, they should get what they expect. I did not get what I was expecting. And I wouldn't mind if I was getting more than I was expecting. But getting less, yeah, it's a problem. Most people would have a problem with that. Ron Toomey says, Carey, I just built an ASRock B760 Pro RS i5. It's a 1450. What's a i5 1450? That can't be. That's not a number, is it? Oh, it's got to be 14500. 32 gigs of RAM with the latest BIOS. For some reason, when I watch videos or live stream, the content will eventually get latency behind the audio. Well, depending on what browser you're using, if it's Chrome or Edge or Firefox, depending on the speed of your internet connection, if you're on Wi-Fi, for example, and you don't have a good strong signal, perhaps you're on 2.4, bump it up to 5. If you're wired, what speed is your link speed? What connection speed do you have? When you run your internet speed test, what's your up and down bandwidth? And finally, what browser extensions do you have installed? A lot of times just taking those browser extensions out, which are typically ad blockers and things like that, cause the exact symptoms that people voluntarily inject into themselves by thinking they're getting away with skipping ads without realizing there are consequences to that. They don't always occur right away, but typically it's only a matter of time. And it's one of the first places I look is just in the extensions. Ad blockers are a big, big no-no if you care about performance and you care about your privacy. You're trading your privacy in exchange for not seeing the ad. There's no winning here. The only way you can win is, and again, I don't know, but if you have a YouTube Premium prescription for me, I medically need it. If you have a YouTube Premium subscription, you don't watch the ads and you don't need the ad blocker, other than maybe other websites you visit. So if I were to put an ad blocker on my browser, I would exclude youtube.com out of it. But preferably take those extensions off. They're all universally spying on you. Ron with his Firestein. That was my joke from a long time ago. Firestein tires, they not only stop on a dime, they pick it up. That is old. Iceman wants to know if I've ever SATA drive failed to clone to an NVMe. I'm a professional computer technician. I have cloned so many drives. And when the drives don't clone according to plan, I'm always able to fix it. So the answer to your question is yes, but the reasons why are never quite the same. There's no pattern of failure for me to look for. It's only for me to respond to each unique situation as it becomes that I become aware of it. It's like asking me how I would defend myself against an attack. Or would I? Well, yes, I would, but also what kind of attack? Is it an attack from one person or a gang of people? Is it a physical attack or a verbal attack? And what am I being attacked with? What kind of weapon are we talking about? There's no two attacks. Just a random attack is likely not going to happen exactly the same way. But if you are into self-defense and you know you're going to defend yourself regardless, you adjust and accommodate for what the situation requires at that time. You react, you respond, and you resolve. That's what I do. So if I had a customer or a viewer, let's just say a viewer, having an issue with the cloning of one drive to another, we would need to talk more with the viewer to find out what they're doing and why. What's your motherboard? What's your processor? Why are you doing this? What are you hoping to achieve? Are you trying to add a secondary storage? Are you trying to replace your main storage? What process and software are you using to clone, and what have you tried so far, and what are your results? Now, based on all of that information, we can then begin to guide you towards a solution. But you have to see there's a very big difference between what you ask and what I need to know. Significant. You're going to have to put more effort into your question if you want any answer worth any value for me. And it's simply because I cannot read your mind, and no two situations are likely going to be similar. They're all very, from my perspective, they're all random. So there is no one-size-fits-all solution to, if it fails, what do you do? I need all of those details. Then I can give you the detail that you're looking for, and that detail will only be beneficial to you and likely not to anybody else, because the chances that they're having a failure and for the same reason on the same hardware using the same software, highly unlikely. It's just kind of a situational thing. If you're looking for that kind of information, then you want to stick with a platform where everything is always the same and you cannot adjust it. So products like Apple will consistently have same results, but you have less choice, things cost more money, and you have less freedom to customize things. Everybody gets the same thing. That's the world of Apple, and you pay more money for that so that you don't have to worry about these kind of problems that can derive from a variation of thousands of different possible hardware combinations and different user experience, right? And sometimes people create their own problems because they don't know what they're doing. Apple kind of walls that all in and prevents any of that from occurring. And if that's appealing to you, you'd be happier with an Apple product. But the consequence of being able to choose any motherboard and any video card and any storage and any RAM, put all that together and expect it all to work trouble-free every time, it doesn't work trouble-free all the time. And how that's resolved depends on, how many possible variables are there of combinations that can result in unique challenges that only affect that one user on that specific combination of hardware. So that's what keeps me interested in this business, is I'm not constantly doing the same thing. I see things I've never seen before, or combinations I've never seen combined before. And it's my job to untangle it, get it straightened out, and get it working. And that requires customization and an open mind to solving each problem uniquely as required by that unique hardware. In some ways, I wish I was an Apple tech, because I would be working on everything the same. On the other hand, that sounds profoundly boring. So, pick your poison, I suppose. I suppose the other answer to your question would simply be yes. Could have provided you with a much shorter answer, but I don't think that's as helpful. Patrick says he only runs the RoboForm extension in his browser and Malwarebytes browser guard. I do the same, Patrick. I run those same two extensions. The extensions I'm most concerned about are VPN, privacy, or ad blocking in particular. Ad blocking's the nasty one. That's the one that'll always bite you in the butt. It's just a matter of time. And if you haven't experienced it yet, you will. It's a cat and mouse game between the folks delivering the content, right? And the consumers trying to steal the content. And as the consumers continue to try and steal it by blocking the ads because the consumers find it annoying, the more challenging it is for whatever content you're consuming to stay in operation and pay their bills, because you're not allowing them to get paid. So they have to struggle to survive. They don't have any choice. They have to disable the ad blocker, or they have to make plans to shut the business down or change the business model to a pay subscription model only, which I believe is where we are going. I think consumers are going to overall continue to take and take and take as long as they can get away with it, and then continue to ask for help as a result of them trying to circumvent something that has long-term consequences that then causes the machine to not operate as it's supposed to, which typically in these scenarios results in removing or replacing the ad blocker. And it never goes away. It's just spinning in circles. Sooner or later, these companies, they're going to have to say, look, in order for us to pay our bills, we got to just dump this ad-based model and just either pay or go somewhere else, because it's not a charity. It's not entitled to you. And if they can't get paid, why would they do it? Why bother? Somebody's got to pay the bill. The situation seems to be getting worse as more and more people get online. The internet's getting more and more crowded, and the cost of distributing the content goes up accordingly. But if the income is not going up accordingly, it's just digging a deeper hole. And at a certain point, you either have to just close the business or change the business model. So what they're doing to avoid that from happening is they break the ad blockers, and then the ad blockers respond by getting around whatever they broke, but then they respond by breaking it again, and the ad blockers just goes around and around. And in the meantime, the consumers are the one that have to deal with this computer not working right, or issues as a result of this constant back and forth between the ad blocking companies and the companies that are just trying to make an honest buck by saying, we're happy to provide you the content. All we ask in return is you watch the ads. If you're not willing to watch the ads, please don't cost our company money by trying to circumvent our ads and yet still take our service without paying for it. At some point, there isn't going to be an option anymore. Companies will simply not be able to provide ad-based content. Look at what's happened to Radeon. Look at what's happened to streaming services. Give it time. I don't think human behavior will change in time. And there will be a paid subscription model only, perhaps a very limited free model where you can only watch a certain number of videos a day without paying. I imagine there has to be something has to change. The one thing that isn't changing is the overall behavior of the consumer that doesn't value the content enough to pay for it, but values it enough to steal it. It's a very difficult place to be. And for that reason, I hear a lot of issues that are a result of these browser extensions. I'm not saying that's what you're doing, but it's the most common solution. Not the only solution, but it's the most common one. Take that ad blocker out of there. Any other unnecessary extensions, that they're all spying on you anyway. Just take them out. Then see if it makes a difference, and if necessary, we continue from there. But that's your first step in 2025. It's a crazy world. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing more than anything in the last 2 years, are the browser extensions. It's a pretty easy fix if you know how to look for it. Hey, there's our friend Mitch Morrison joins us in the chat today. He says his new computer's running great, and it's his first Windows 11 computer, which he was very intimidated by. It was avoiding Windows 11 because, you know, according to the internet, it's terrible and should be avoided. And so he believed that. Now that he's got it and he's using it, he says, you know, this isn't what people made it out to be. It's not that different. I could get used to this. I got no real complaint. So there was no reason for the fear and anxiety that was, you know, it's flooding the internet with essentially bad attitude. I don't want to change. I don't like it. Then don't. But please don't let that interfere with your willingness to change, or give it a shot, at the very least. It may not be as bad as people make it out to be. And sure enough, he tries it and he's like, I don't know what the big deal is. This is not a big deal. That's what I've been trying to say, but unfortunately I'm a quiet little voice in a sea of very loud negative voices. So there you go. If Mitch's experience may be more relatable to you than my own, take it from Mitch. Becca Cameron says, I hope he shows the fake fan vent. Like I said, there could be other models of this computer that use the same case where the fan is utilized. So let's not just assume that this was done with intention. It just may be convenient to repurpose a case that you already got all the manufacturing set up for. This plate is really where the issue is. Let me get up a little closer to the camera so you can see that so long as we have this plate, there's no room for a fan here. If the plate were removed, then perhaps, yeah, we could get a little fan down there, or if nothing else, direct airflow passing through those components, which even at passive cooling would still be more than boxing it in. So here's the rear plate. Okay, and then, sorry, the rear cover. This is that plate. Now, these holes are what secure the screws that go in here onto the top. I think, in a minute, which direction does this go in now? Yeah, we're going this way. So if we put that back on, do we have any space for a fan in there? I'm thinking no, but I could be wrong. Maybe. Maybe. Could happen. The problem is there's no holes in this, so where's the fan going to blow air into or get air from? There's no ventilation through this plate. And then where would you run the power cable? Maybe one of these little cutouts here. This plate would have to go. And I don't see any holes around here to mount the fan to the cover, so the fan would have to be mounted to some piece inside, which I would prefer anyway, so that we don't end up breaking the power cables if they're attached to the bottom lid here, and you end up breaking the cables right off the fan. So having the fan mounted down into the computer instead of the cover is a preferred method from my perspective. But yeah, this plate has basically no ventilation. You're boxing the heat in there. And you'll see that these two pieces of metal that are pushed out right now, they're towards you. That would be should be the part that's making contact with the NVMe drive. You wouldn't want to, maybe you would. Maybe it looks like, based on the impression I'm seeing from thermal tape, that this is pushed away from the NVMe drive instead of towards it. That's a bizarre choice, because I would think your connection would be firmer between the thermal tape on this heat spreader, let's call it, to the drive. You're pushing it away from the drive, and that's what looks like they did. So if I put this back down here, which way does it go? Doesn't seem to want to go that way. Let's turn it this way, because I've got to be, oh, I see. It would have to go on this way to be over the NVMe drives, or the M.2 drives. I should not do this with the power on, but wouldn't be the first time. Yeah, I guess that goes on. Doesn't feel right. Yeah, it's not. It's not going to go on that way. These two indentations have to be on my left. So if I flip it around, keeping these on the left, that means I can't put this in any other orientation. it only can go in one way or upside down. And upside down, it's definitely not fitting. So where you see these posts extending out, these need to go down towards the board. What a bizarre design choice this is. Very strange. Now that sat down really good that time. I'll go ahead and start piecing this back together. And in the meantime, if you have other questions for me, this will be the time to ask. We've just reached our 2-hour mark today. Tomorrow, it's Friday. We always do videos on Fridays. And I'm not quite sure what the subject of tomorrow's video is going to be. I have a couple of machines I need to get back to finishing that are in a process of being built. So we could do that. I have another mini PC from a company we've never worked with before called Minix. And they have a fanless machine that is 100% silent, 0 dB. It's not a fast computer. Faster you go, the more heat you're going to deal with, and the more cooling you need, and the more noise you're going to have. It's like an N150 or N300, I think is what it is. So by today's standards, it might seem slow, but by the standards of just a few years ago, it's incredible value, I think, for somebody who absolutely demands a 100% silent PC that will never ever deal with a fan failure. It doesn't have any fans. Therefore, there's no fans that can break. There's no fans that can make any noise. And you're just dealing with passive cooling. That results in a computer that's made of a very heavy metal heat dissipating heatsink design. So it's incredibly heavy for as small as it is. And that's because that's what's dissipating the heat instead of a fan. And for some of you, that might be right up your alley and might be just what you're looking for. And for others, well, might be interested to know that such things exist for people that have such needs, for whatever reason they do. Let's see, which way did this go back on? Did it go on this way or did it go on this way? Get my glasses so as I can seize. I can't remember. Why did I take it off? Boy, I'll tell you, it looks like it'll be happy either way. Well, I'm gonna stick with that, with the label up towards the front and the contactless label down towards the back. That seems about right to me. I guess as long as it sits in there properly, it doesn't matter if it's upside down. Sometimes they're reversible in that sense. Most of the time they're not. The other way you'll know is that the screws won't reach, perhaps, if there's different levels of depth that the mount points go down to behind it. But these, I think, are all the same all the way around. So I'm going to guess I got it right. I could go back to the video just to confirm, but as long as it fits, I guess it doesn't matter. I either got it right or it doesn't matter is what I'm trying to say. And then with the last screw back in, we'll put those rubber feet back on. You got to see how easy Acronis is to use. Very few questions to answer. The automated mode of Acronis is, generally speaking, exactly what I want nearly every single time I use the product. It's pretty rare I need to correct its automation, but you can if you need to. There you go. There you go. All right. Time to put away some tools and look and see if there's any questions I can answer for you guys. Charlie says, I wonder how much more these minis will cost with new tariffs. Yeah, we'll wait and see. They keep getting delayed. So more than likely, if I had to guess, which I can only guess, if there's a So there's already a tariff. Make no mistake about it. There's always been a tariff. And your question is, well, how much would the machine be? It'll be directly in relation to how much more the tariff is. So if the tariff ends up costing the manufacturer $10 or $15 per unit, which would be a pretty significant tariff, then you can expect to pay $15 to $20 more per unit. Nobody's profiting off the tariffs. The idea is that, as I understand it, growing up in Detroit, we had a big automotive industry in Michigan. And when the auto manufacturers decided that they could build cars cheaper in Canada and Mexico, the Americans didn't get a discount on that. People lost their jobs. Other people did the work, the same work the Americans were doing in a country where they didn't have to pay them as much. And the profit margin for the car manufacturer went up. In the meantime, entire cities went bankrupt. Flourishing cities like Flint, Michigan became an apocalyptic landscape because nearly everybody in that city had worked for generations for the auto manufacturers, who did not betray those auto manufacturers and did not deserve the auto manufacturers leaving for more greed and abandoning all these people that for generations relied on that as the source of income to provide for their families and have the American dream. If the reason the auto manufacturers do that isn't for greed, but it's so that they can compete with other countries that have cheaper labor, then how do you level the playing field? So the question should be, when we here in America, when we make goods and we send those goods to Europe, how much of a tariff is Europe charging us? So if we want to build a Ford and we want to sell that Ford in Germany, how much tariff is Germany adding to the cost of that Ford? So if you're German and you want to buy that American car versus the car BMW or Mercedes or Volkswagen or Porsche, whatever, it's going to be more of a level comparison, be it fair or not. And for whatever reason, the government in America said, you can build the car cheaper. We will not match what you're charging us. That'll make it cheaper for Americans to buy. So now the Americans are buying cars and sending their American money to the foreign manufacturers. And the American manufacturers, to compete with that, have to start making their cars over there too, so that there's no tariff. BMW makes cars here in America. They have a BMW plant, I believe, in Georgia or maybe in South Carolina. And that's to help reduce tariff cost. You can build it here and sell it here. And then Americans are building their cars somewhere else. And this whole thing gets really confusing with the tariffs trying to even out the difference in the economies. They're not there to punish anybody. They're there to give you as a consumer a choice if you want your money to stay in your country to provide people of your country jobs. We used to, in the 70s, particularly in the 70s, living in Detroit, there was a lot of American-built, American-made, made in America pride. It seems to have faded and gone away. And I remember growing up, there were bumper stickers, probably from people that worked in the auto industry. And I don't know why I remember it, but I saw it everywhere as a child. And it said, "Are you hungry? Eat your import." When the pandemic hit, and it seems like a lot of people forgot, we couldn't get things in America that we used to make here. We don't make it here anymore. So what happened? We had something called supply chain issues. Those supply chain issues would not have been as severe if we still had our own ability to self-rely. Because when everything hit the fan, you weren't shopping for the lowest price anymore. You're just trying to get your hands on some toilet paper. You were just trying to get your hands on something you had taken for granted every day. It's always been available to you. But you didn't realize that that was made in another country on a ship for 2 or 3 weeks and then put on a truck and trucked out over the roads to whatever area of the country you live in. And as a result of not being able to compete with those lower prices from the cheaper manufacturing or moving manufacturing over there, you've removed the manufacturing from your own country. And so now your country is dependent upon other countries just for basic survival needs at any cost. So what starts out as cheap suddenly gets really expensive because you no longer have a choice anymore. So you can preemptively give consumers an option and give your citizens an opportunity for employment that had been taken from them and reestablish local manufacturing for local jobs, being less dependent, not completely independent, but less dependent on receiving goods from other countries that are basic staples and necessities versus not getting them at all. So one way or another, this is going to happen, and that dependency comes at a cost. And all you need to do is think back to the pandemic and think about the empty grocery store shelves. Think about how difficult it was to get simple things, and forget about the price. Just find me a roll of toilet paper. That's what it came down to because we were unable to provide for ourselves. And that scares me, and I never want to go through that again. If raising tariffs levels the playing field of economies, then there are jobs to be had. There are the pride in manufacturing to return back to this country where we are not dependent upon another country to provide us basic necessities. That's not to say it has to be one or the other. I'd like to see both. But if the one made here costs more because the labor costs more, and the one over there costs less because the labor costs less, then you add a tariff on theirs so that you as a consumer have an equal choice. It's the same price one way or the other. You want to buy and support local, or do you want to send your money overseas? If it's the same price, which would you choose? And then if there's any sort of war, conflict, or pandemic, you still have the capability of self-reliance versus going back on your hands and knees. What choice do you have if you've just given up all your manufacturing? So that's what scares me. I'd like to see a more level playing field and more consumer choice. If I have the ability to buy from a small business, I will give a small business my business over a large corporation, primarily because the large corporations are often doing this kind of stuff in order to increase profit. I also grew up in the 80s where we didn't have a lot. We have so much available to us today. We all live like rich people did. Like, to me, the stuff I see was only for the rich people. Now we all live like rich people. We don't want to give it up. It's like taking the pacifier away from a baby. It wasn't your pacifier. You know what I mean? This doesn't. Someone else provided that to you, and God forbid they take away something you didn't earn. I struggle with this. I understand it. I would just like to see more balance. That's all. That pandemic really exposed the weakness of where we allowed this country, our country, the United States, to lose a lot of their self-reliance. And we all, as Americans, paid the price for that. We went without for a while. And if there's not a lesson to be learned, if we've already forgotten that soon, I don't know. I guess it'll happen again. If you do a little research on what Europe charges Ford and GM to send a car to Europe, and look at what the United States charges for BMW or Mercedes to send a car here, you should be outraged. If you don't feel used and taken advantage of, if you don't feel like that's wrong, I don't know what to tell you. They're going to pay less and charge you more. So if you want to buy their thing, for their thing to come into the country, they only pay this much. But if you want to buy our thing in their country, you have to pay that much. But if it's like, this doesn't affect me, what do I care? This does affect you, because that affects jobs and that affects livelihoods. Now, if they're charging us the same as what we're charging them, to trade, fair deal. It's not been fair for a long time. Debbie mentions about toilet paper being made here in the US. I think you've missed my point. So these videos are live and unscripted. And as I try to find an example in the moment, if you were to then take the research of what I said that I did not have the benefit of, simply because it was on the top of my mind as an example, there are other factors that have to be weighed into that as to why these results were the way they were. And perhaps if I had the time to research that, I could have picked a better example. And for you to hone in on that one, simply because it was not the best example I could give, but rather the first example that came to my mind, does not negate the difficulties of the supply chain in nearly every industry during the pandemic. So I would prefer, if you did not hone in on an example, to try to dismantle it as though everything is the same. That's not what was meant. It wasn't meant to be everything follows the same process, but there is a same cause and effect, and how far back you look at the chain of events that resulted in that downfall will always lead you back to some dependence on a foreign entity, right? Otherwise, we would have just kept producing it regardless. So as long as we are dependent for anything, that is, and again, we cannot eliminate that, nor should we, but we also could reel it in a little bit. We might have taken it too far, and it just covered every industry: cars, groceries, toilet paper, housing, everything became chaotic. So let's not focus on the minutia, and let's look at the big picture and find out what all of that has in common. And that is where the crux of it is. And I don't want to go through that again, but it's not my choice. The attitude of the citizens needs to understand what the consequences are. And if they refuse to understand it and they don't care, well, I guess I have to suffer because of them too. We all will. So in the meantime, I don't have the answers, but it's been broken for a long time. And right there during the pandemic, it shows you what will happen again if nothing changes. It's just a matter of time. It'd be nice to have a backup, a contingency, and it'd be nice for consumers to have a choice, and it'd be nice for consumers to have more availability of jobs here in the United States. I don't know the answers. I'm just saying it would be nice. Is that tariffs? I don't know. I don't know, but it's definitely other countries playing by different rules than America's playing. And so the rules need to be more fair. Either that, or we just continue doing what we're doing until our ultimate demise, until we can no longer do anything for ourselves and we no longer have any money to buy anything at any price, regardless of how cheap or available it is. There's just no money to be had because there's no jobs to be had, so there's no money to be earned. So you could sell me something for $1, but if I don't have that dollar, it might as well be $1,000. And that's what happens when you swing too far the other way. I'm no economics guy, but that seems pretty basic to me. But I might be oversimplifying it. Fred says, way back 9 or 10 years ago, I bought a SATA M.2. It was half the price, 500 gigs for about $100 back then. Yeah, I guess that probably is about right. I can't remember when NVMe drives and SATA drive prices became just a few dollars apart. These days, NVMe drives are often less money than SATA drives for the same capacity. But I couldn't precisely tell you when it was where there was any significant price difference between an M.2 SATA and an M.2 NVMe, where the SATA was half the price. Not an M.2. Now, a SATA 2.5-inch drive being half the price, yes. But a SATA M.2 versus an NVMe M.2, never in my career do I recall there being a double price differential. If it happened, I never saw it. It was always maybe 20 bucks at the worst. It was never that extreme. But again, even to this day, if you go to look at a 2.5-inch SSD and compare it with the price of a M.2 SSD, both being SATA, even though the 2.5-inch drive is more material and takes more to make it, they sell for significantly less. Davey said, it's a damn shame how much of our manufacturing is no longer here in the United States. GE bought the company I worked for, took the tech and moved it to China and Ireland and shut down our plant. Yeah, and it's devastated. You know, I saw the devastation firsthand in Detroit. Entire cities just wiped off, just Mad Max, zombie apocalypse, total devastation. Because everybody had their eggs in that basket. Everybody in that community lived close to that manufacturing plant or plants. They just assumed that job was always going to be there. Their kids would work in that plant. And so it was for a while until it wasn't. And those people did nothing wrong. And well, Flint has done a pretty good job of recovery. It's just not what it used to be. Nor Pontiac. Pontiac used to be a really nice city. By comparison, I wouldn't go at night. I don't know. There's some pretty rough areas hit hard in Michigan, primarily where the auto manufacturing was the main source of income that drove an entire city. When that went away due to profit and greed, there was no thank you for the sacrifice that those generations of people had made. You got your check. We're done with you now. So long. You're on your own. That's pretty brutal. My friend Ron says there's a $10 difference between M.2 SATA and NVMe. I don't know that there is. And the reason I say that is, are you looking at Generation 3 NVMe or are you looking at Gen 4? Because when I'm talking about the price difference, I'm talking about an entry-level Generation 3 NVMe drive versus the same capacity SATA drive. They should be maybe $2 apart. If not, I've often seen the NVMe Gen 3 drives cheaper at the same capacity, but in the last few months, some things may have changed in the economy. So as the Gen 3 drives phase out and replace for Gen 4, we should start seeing some Gen 6 drives maybe next year. That'll again double our speeds from 14,000 to 28,000. And the consortium has ratified, I believe, Gen 7. Or PCIe Gen 7 is already the details of the standards and how that works. If they're not already agreed upon, they're very, very close. That will again double from, let's say, 30,000 to 60,000 once the technology catches up and we get there, and we're talking a few years from now. But that's how far ahead the engineers are, and then how long it takes to get things up to speed, right? We agree on the platform, we agree on the way it's implemented, and then we put into effect the manufacturing processes that are required to make it, along with the chip manufacturers to keep up. And all of that starts now for Gen 7. You haven't even seen Gen 6 yet, but Gen 6 drives have been demonstrated at trade shows and have hit those speeds of nearly 30,000. I don't know who needs it. It's just a point of diminishing returns, but there's no stopping it. And then Gen 8 will follow. And there you go. Patrick said our town had an abandoned steel factory for many years in Trenton, Michigan. They finally tore it down last year, but still don't know what's going on in that location. John Williams says, I remember when the Janesville, Wisconsin General Motors plant closed down, everyone was scrambling for jobs, doing almost anything. Your whole city all lost a job. It's not just you looking for work. It's you and your neighbors and their neighbors and everybody on the block and everybody in the city all suddenly looking for work at the same time. is devastating. Ron Tomey says, if you could choose between an i5 9600K Intel CPU or an i7 8700K at the same price, which would you choose? I would choose the i5 9600K. For sure. That's easy. Just looking to see there's other questions I can answer. David Graham wants to know if there's a fan header on the motherboard. It wouldn't matter if there was. There's nowhere to put a fan. I would not recommend anything new that requires a consumer to modify it for it to work properly. Just buy something else. If something like that's important to you, buy something new that meets your needs. Don't try and buy something and force it into your needs. It's a sure path down dissatisfaction and disappointment when you void your own warranty and end up wasting your money over damaging what was a perfectly good product that just wasn't up to your level of standards that you never should have purchased to begin with. You should be buying a product more in line with what you need. This idea of modifying something to make it what you need is a used mindset. That's when you're at a garage sale. That's when you're, spending very little money with no warranty, take it as is. At that point, it's a project box where you don't have a lot to lose if you modify it. But if you're going to spend your hard-earned money on something brand new under warranty, I would recommend you keep it that way until your warranty expires. If otherwise, simply buy something better suited to what you need. That would be my advice. Stevie says, Carey, nice stream. I work on some laptops for my customers. There's a lot of work available there. He's very busy, apparently, doing a lot of computer work. And he says, I listen to you in the background. Right on. Well, thanks for hanging out with us. And glad to hear we have other peers in the repair business that are part of this community. I'm not seeing any other questions here, so I guess that'll wrap it up for today. We're about a half an hour over time. I feel like I've beaten up on Kamrui enough, but if I would have known this going into it, we would have never even done this review. Just to be clear, it was not my intention, it's just my reaction. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with me today. I've enjoyed our conversation and perspectives, and certainly my opinions are that of my own. I do not expect to convince anybody of my Being right or wrong, I don't care. Anybody who cares about me being right or wrong, I don't care about that either. For people that want to start a channel and talk about their ideas, YouTube is available for everybody. And here on my channel, I will be honest. Whether or not you agree with that honesty is not important, nor is it required, nor is it asked. So we'll agree to disagree. And I do enjoy having the conversations with no expectation of approval other than we respect each other's perspective. I don't think anybody is wrong, and I don't think anybody's right simply based on whether or not they agree with me. That's a very primitive way to look at the world. If you feel confident in what you believe, you should not require the approval of others. On the other hand, you should not feel compelled to put yourself higher up to think it's your job to educate other people when you're the one who might be wrong. So sometimes when we engage in certain conversation, what is heard is not what I've said. And I want to make it very clear that my opinions are that of my own, and they do not require anybody to agree with them. And that's just the way it's always been. It's never been any different. So unless you're new here, we strongly encourage people to not be so impressionable. It's not my duty, or it's not my goal to get everybody to agree with me. It doesn't. I have a business to run. And unless you're helping me to pay those bills, right? Unless you're an investor in my business, or you're an investor in Microsoft or Intel, your opinions on these matters are just as valuable as mine in that they have no impact on the world around us. They make for some interesting, thoughtful discussion. Sometimes we live in a world quite often where there's no right or wrong. Somebody on one side of the fence might think their side of the fence is better. Somebody on the other side of the fence will say that person's an idiot. They clearly live on the worst side of the fence. Who cares? You don't like where you're at, leave. You don't like what you hear, it offends you, don't listen anymore. And if you have an opposing point of view you want to let everybody know, start a YouTube channel. And I'm not here to preach to a choir. I'm here to be honest. And if you can't handle it, well, that was never a requirement that was placed upon me. So just so you guys know, I will always maintain my integrity and my honesty, even if somebody disagrees or it's not the popular thing. I don't care. It's just not how I was raised, and I'd just rather be consistent and honest. And if I get information that changes my perspective, and this would be an example, if you asked me how I felt about this yesterday, based on the information I had, I concluded very differently from the information I've gotten since that has changed, right? But it's not because somebody said something to me. It's because of personal experience. And so as we share these experiences, and I do my best to do this live, so it's like you're having the experience through me. I'm learning it at the same time. We're seeing it together. This is a more natural, less argumentative way to convey information. If someone wants to deny that, that's their choice, but it doesn't really have any impact on my business, so it's kind of a pointless exercise. And we didn't really see that in the chat room today, but I put that out there because I know people watching the video after it's aired live may feel compelled to inject their opinion when it makes no difference other than to potentially create rifts between people for something you can't control and you have no authority or power over. I'm not suggesting anybody needs correction, nor do I. You're welcome to believe what you want, and you're also welcome, if you feel compelled to share that with the world, to make your own YouTube video. I don't want to see people coming onto my platform, standing on my stage and preaching to my audience. It's not your stage and it's not your audience. You can do that in your stage and your audience. So hopefully I'm nipping that in the bud before it happens. If not, we know who to just remove from the community if they just can't respect other people. I don't personally mind that people have, in fact, I enjoy the different attitudes and perspectives. that I see on other YouTube channels. But at the end of the day, I have a business to run, and I decided to share this experience with you guys. And I really appreciate the community who overall really gets what we're doing here. It's not about convincing you to think any differently. It's just about sharing an experience. And my reaction to that experience is mine, and your reaction to that experience is yours. And that's the way it should be. We should respect one another regardless if they agree or disagree. And what we shouldn't do is impose on other people to shove our beliefs down their throat. You should just be able to say at the end of the day, what difference does it make? So in any event, we will let you know if we hear back from Kamrui on what's going on with the misinformation on the Amazon page and what's going on with using a SATA drive in a modern computer. And based on that response, if we get one, we'll share it with you, and that will determine whether or not we look at another unit for review. Because I never like to walk away from a manufacturer unless I feel like I've given up on them. I would never force them to do things my way. We'll simply, the world's a big place. They don't need my approval. I don't need their. If we can get together and work together with the right values, I certainly would give them that opportunity. If it's clear they feel justified in what they're doing, and it's clear to me I feel justified in moving a different direction, that's as far as it goes. It's never going to be an argument, and it's never going to be a debate. Like I said, the world's a big place. We just move away, they'll move away, and life goes on regardless. So with that, thank you guys for hanging out with me today. Thank you for your support and this amazing community that we have here. Let's see. Just looking at the chat. Patrick Manny wants to know if anybody's having problems with the NVIDIA driver version 572.83 with the GTX 1650. He's getting black screens and the system won't restart. I haven't heard of any issues, but if anybody has and you want to provide some feedback, I'm sure he'd appreciate it. Trigger Point says, can I put the rubber feet beside the screw holes since they only re-stick once? I never said they only. I don't know where you got that. The adhesion is reduced every time you remove them, and of course over time. Not immediately and absolutely. We don't live in a world of absolutes, I'm sorry. It's just not always the same every single time. And I don't know why you would care about a computer you don't own that you have no investment in on where I put rubber feet. It doesn't, what business is that of yours? When you have yours, I would not tell you how to put the rubber feet back on your computer. But when I'm building a computer for you, then absolutely you would have that expectation. You can remove those rubber feet quite a few times before they'll start falling off, where the adhesion is reduced to a point that they no longer stay there. But if you do it the way I've demonstrated today, they should be on fine. They're not going to go anywhere. But after a couple more times, it's going to reduce that adhesion. If the adhesion doesn't reduce, then what ends up happening is you end up tearing the rubber as it ages, and now the foot's in two pieces. So which would you prefer? If that's a concern you have, then that's a concern you have to resolve. It is not your concerns I have to resolve. Unless I'm getting paid to do that, you do you, I'll do me, and we'll respect that consideration from each other. I think that's a pretty good way to look at it. Ron Barnish says, do we still get a discount from RoboForm? That is for new RoboForm customers only. There is no discount on renewals. And again, that's on RoboForm. That's how they've decided they want to pursue the marketing at this time and for about the last year or so. If anything changes, I'll be sure and let you know. Ross says, I think a review of the Plimpton P70 tablet came out last year would make a nice review. We don't really review tablets here. The only reason we reviewed a tablet would be if a manufacturer sent us to, like Minisforum, sent us a tablet. We would not spend upwards of $1,000 for a video that earns $120 in total over the course of months, unless we wanted to quickly go out of business. Now, if the manufacturer wanted to send us one for review, that's possible for us to spend the time to review it, though it's definitely not my specialty. If there's an opportunity and there's something unique about it worth reviewing, and we can get one, you know, sent to us, certainly a possibility. I mean, I've never heard of it, and tablets aren't my specialty, but I wouldn't definitely say no. But I know the current state of things, we cannot afford to buy that. And I don't see any desire to buy it just to make a review for another company to benefit from it. There's got to be something in it for us to do that. I do appreciate the suggestion. I just want to explain to you that it can be very difficult to get companies to send us product, and it can be very difficult to get viewers to want to pay anything for the content. So we're trying to find a balance between what we're able to do, the companies that are willing to send us product to review, what we're willing to buy, what we have a budget to buy. And we're always open to any suggestions you have, including the tablet. It's not a bad suggestion. I'm just explaining what our obstacles are to being able to honor your request. If you want to send us one, I definitely will review it. Somebody's just got to cover the cost. We'll cover the cost of the review. Mark Leibowitz said he replaced a desktop PC some time ago that had been sitting in place so long that I picked up the computer and the rubber feet were stuck to the floor. The non-sticky end became the sticky end, probably because somebody spilled something and didn't clean it up right. Or there was some film on the floor that deteriorated into becoming sticky. The way thermal compound isn't exactly a sticky substance, but it can become like glue in the right circumstance. He said, you should have seen the inside of that desktop. It had dust elephants, not dust bunnies. The dust elephants scared away the dust bunnies long before I got there. Yeah. All right, well, I think that'll wrap it up for today. Again, I appreciate the conversation. I appreciate that we can share this experience together, and my reaction to it, which, you know, normally you don't see this kind of reaction from me from a review. Disappointment. I had high hopes. Everything's so good, so good. One thing just ruins it all. Again, if we hear back from Kamrui, we'll let you know what they say. We have a live video tomorrow at 1 o'clock, every Friday, 1 o'clock. It's 1 o'clock Pacific time, 4 p.m. 4 p.m.? Yeah, 4 p.m. Eastern. The time zone throws me off. Every single Friday. We hope you'll join us then. Not sure what's going on over the weekend yet. We still have renovations happening here that might prevent us from broadcasting. With regard to the content tomorrow, as I mentioned, I've got a few builds to finish. I have the Minix mini PC to review, although I'm a little mini PC'd out right now. Maybe review that next week is what I'm personally feeling. But if you feel differently, you let me know. And thank you again for all of your support. Thank you to all the members, of course, to Mara for all the hard work she does in the background doing all of our channel administration. Let me just check my phone one time before we check out and say thank you once again to our super chats that came in. During today's broadcast. I'm just trying to find the listing. So thank you to David Graham, Iceman48, Thank you to Abdul Azim Patel and Craig Wilson. Thank you to Mark Gaines, of course. For those renewing membership, Dwayne Blackwelder, Matthew Burden, thank you guys for continuing your support here so we can continue to be free of corporate sponsorship. And one quick check of the email just before we say goodbye. Whoops, wrong button, Carey. I don't think I missed anything. Certainly if I have, my apologies. We certainly appreciate all the support we get in the community. We are not here to fight or argue, so if that's what you're looking for, I'm not participating in that. Again, just trying to preempt some comments regarding the tariff discussion. I have no control over those end results. It's just my reaction and my understanding of it. Whether you agree with it or not, it doesn't matter. We don't need to know. Okay. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you all again. Hopefully you'll be back here tomorrow, 1 o'clock, and I hope to see you then. As a reminder, our friends at SCD Keys, we still have those discounts on Microsoft Windows and Microsoft Office licenses. There's a 30% discount code in our video notes, and that just saves you an extra 30%. We're not commission-based here. We're just hopefully saving you some money on a quality product where you don't have to worry if you're getting scammed. There's 6 months of support with every product they sell. They stand behind it 100%. And I would challenge anybody to find any difference between what they're selling and what Microsoft is selling other than the price. It is that legit, and you're welcome to look under it with the strongest magnifying glass you can. And as far as I can tell, even Microsoft says there's nothing wrong with this. So I use it myself, I use it in my business, and it took a lot to convince me. Okay, so as far as I know, and every bit of research I have done, you're getting the exact same product that passes all of the same requirements and meets all of any sort of legal issues. And that's why they've been doing this for like 15 or 17 years. So there's still some people that come out and want to tell me that it ain't right, but they can't provide any evidence to that. And I would be open to it if they could provide any. So it's just that they have a belief that doesn't reach reality, and they're welcome to have that belief. But I'm telling you, if I use it in my business and I am putting my business on the line, it better be straight up 100%, because it's not worth the savings of a few dollars to throw my whole career away. So if that helps to get you any better of a mindset that this is a real trusted provider, and of course, if there are any problems, you can always reach out to me directly. So either way, you're covered. Thank you for watching. We'll see you all again very, very soon. Links to everything in the video notes below the video. Bye for now.